We're in a new month, but it's the same old Louie T Network podcast heat that you're going to get. It is now May, and this is going to be an interesting month. We know that the NFL is about to come to sort of a screeching halt here over the next month or so. You get to that midpoint of June, and everybody turns out the lights for about a month. You're going to get the NFL schedule release sometime in May. I'm guessing here in about 2 weeks, right? Somewhere in the middle of the month, the 15th, the 14th, the 13th, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then after that, you got all these little mini camps and things of that nature. The mandatory minis are somewhere in that first or second week of June for most teams, and then nothing. We're still on the high from the draft. So I still got more to talk about there. I know y'all heard that Kendrick Lamar track, EUPHORIA. I'm not going to talk about it too much because I'm going to save that for my MusicHead University channel. And I'm going to do that tomorrow. I'm trying to decide if I want to do it tomorrow night or tomorrow during the afternoon. It's going to have to be tomorrow afternoon because I got the Commanders, the Command Post show tomorrow night. So it'll have to be tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to do it at some point tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit about that. The NBA playoffs shit got interesting yesterday. Really, really interesting in a number of series yesterday. So we're going to talk about that and then some here on the 415th. Damn, I'll do that twice and still miss his monkey ass. Louie T Network podcast that starts now. Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Could it be? But me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 415th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, number of topics to get to tonight before we actually start the show. I want to start by talking NBA playoffs. Then I want to we'll talk about Kendrick, and then we'll talk about a quick story that I thought about. I don't think I've told you guys this. I might have told y'all this already, whatever the case may be. If I haven't, I'll tell you tonight. If I have, I apologize in advance for telling you again. So let's start with the NBA playoffs. All right. Shout out to all the teams that have already advanced. Defending NBA champion Denver Nuggets have advanced. The Minnesota Timberwolves have advanced by sweeping the Phoenix Suns. Their owner has come out and said that there will not be sweeping changes. He didn't say there won't be any changes, but there won't be sweeping changes. So don't expect them to blow up that big three that they have. They may go in a different direction from a coaching standpoint. We'll see. Great news on a couple of injury fronts. Number one, Kristaps Porzingis, thank you, Jesus, did not, rupture his Achilles or anything like that. The first thing I thought when I saw him hobbling around like that was, oh shit, this is an Achilles. And he's had an Achilles before. So I was a little nervous. And he tried to stay in the game, and I was like, bro, what are you doing? It's the Miami Heat. You guys are going to win with or without you. Get out of there. What are you doing? And then, Celtics fans were waiting with bated breath to see what the results of the MRI was going to be. Everything came back negative. He is just sore. They said that he could miss the next series, which could be problematic. Now you're starting to get into those teams that are actually good enough to bounce Boston. But it could have been worse. He could have been out for the rest of the season, right? So that's great news. And then Chris Finch, I don't know if you guys saw towards the end of that Suns Timberwolves game, there was a foul committed by, I want to say it was Devin Booker. It was a stupid foul because they didn't need it at that time. They were still within striking distance. And that foul, the Timberwolves, they put Mike Conley at the line to make 2 free throws to kind of put the game a little bit further out of reach. With the time that was left on the clock, it was a dumb foul, but they're not a smart team. And Devin Booker isn't a smart basketball player. And he knocked Conley into his head coach, Chris Finch, who then like tears his knee up. It was a really crazy scene there. He's had surgery already, and all reports point to him making the trip to Denver for game 1, which is amazing considering the circumstances. So glad to know he's okay. As okay as he could have been from a very scary situation. But congratulations to the Timberwolves for moving on, the Nuggets for moving on. The Celtics took care of the Heat after the game 2 debacle. They came back, won 3 straight, and took care of them in short order. And now they'll be taking on the winner of that very competitive 4-5 matchup between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Orlando Magic. On the West side, I think we already talked about the 2 teams that have advanced, Timberwolves and Nuggets. Big game tonight, a very pivotal game 5 in LA with the Clippers and Mavs. The winner of that game, I think, is going to win the series. We'll see what happens there. And then obviously we had a pivotal game 5 yesterday, 2 of them yesterday. And then we had a game 5 with the Bucks facing elimination at home, taking care of the Indiana Pacers. And that's where I want to start. We'll start there and work our way to the most entertaining game of yesterday. So we'll start with the one game that was a blowout. And that was Indiana going to Milwaukee and getting their doors blown off. And it's not uncommon to see that happen. You go up 3-1, you got a team on the ropes, you go back to their building. You know in your mind, hey, we don't have to win this game. We're playing with house money. But it does intensify the pressure of having to win game 6. And a team like Indiana, who really never has been there before, they've never really been in this spot per se, with the core of guys that they have now. It'll be interesting to see if they can take care of business when they go back to Indiana. But they played like a team that felt like, if we win this game, great. We get rid of them. It's over. But it also felt like, hey, we still know we can go home and close it out in 6. So we're not tripping. You're playing a dangerous game because the Bucks could get back both Dame Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo in game 6. And if that happens, who knows? I mean, both of them are going to come back somewhat rusty, especially Giannis. But his game isn't predicated on shooting from distance. His game is predicated on getting to the basket. And nobody does it better than him in the league currently right now. Him and LeBron probably are the 2 best at just putting their head down and getting to the basket. And so you don't need rust. You don't have rust when you're a guy that puts his head down and gets to the basket. So it could be a massive turn of events if those 2 are able to return from injury for game 6. It could turn that whole series upside down. And what a spectacular performance by the Bucks without their 2 biggest stars, without Lillard, without Antetokounmpo. Middleton finally stepped up, and you've been waiting for that. Bobby Portis was outstanding. He's really been really good this entire series, to be honest with you. And they got contributions from guys like Malik Beasley was shooting the lights out At one point, he went nuts. They got a big contribution from Patrick Beverly. Anytime you get, the kind of points they got from those two in the backcourt, you're going to have a chance to win every single time, right? So big performance by the Bucks to get it done. And now you go back to Indiana down 3-2, but there's a chance you could get one or both of your star players back. And if that's the case, Indiana could be in a little bit of trouble. We'll see. I still think Indiana wins that series. My gut still tells me they take care of business. And I don't know if, one or both of those guys are going to be back. And I don't even know if it matters, to be honest, if both of those guys come back. Defensively, I still think that bringing those two back, specifically Dame, you're going to struggle defensively. So I still think there's a chance that Indiana wins that series. I still think they lose game 6, and there's no way in hell I'm picking them to go to Milwaukee and win in game 7. Crowd will be electric, and this is a championship Bucks team. They've been there, done that. They know what it takes. They're going to smell blood at that point. So they better get it done at home in game 6 if you want to advance to the next round if you're Indiana. If they don't, I can't see them going back to Milwaukee and winning in game 7. As for the 4-5 matchup in the East, sticking with the East, because all 3 of the games yesterday were all East games, and they were all spectacular. None better, though, than the Knicks and the Sixers. We'll get to that one in a second. But this Cavs Magic game wasn't that bad either. This one was pretty damn competitive. And the Cavaliers were without their big man, Jared Allen, in the lineup. So it's always great when you got 2 bigs, right? And so they played with that kind of twin tower lineup with Allen at the 5 and Mobley, at the 4. So it was a natural progression to slide Mobley over to the 5 and have him man up the center position. What that requires, though, is for guys that are, towards the end of the bench, veterans, to have to get run. So we saw some Tristan Thompson. We saw one of the Morris twins get in there and get some run. And he made a huge 3 from the corner, did Morris, in this ball game. But the story early was Darius Garland. He went apeshit in the first quarter. I think he scored like 17 points in the first quarter. It's like he couldn't miss. They got off to a fast start, but the Magic would not go away. And, these are the types. I don't think they're going to win the series. I've already said this, but you can see the growth. And this is why I love playoff basketball, right? I love watching young teams come of age. And you can see the growth just in this series with Orlando, right? So you start the series off, game 1, they're overwhelmed by the moment. They're overwhelmed by being on the road in a playoff environment. And you can tell they just weren't ready for what was playoff basketball on the road. They struggled to make shots. They went through these long stretches where they couldn't score. They couldn't even get into an offensive rhythm. It was disjointed. It was nasty, and they got blown out. Wire-to-wire win for Cleveland. Game 2, they played a little bit better, but they still never were that consistent team that we saw from the regular season. But you could see them kind of saying, okay, that deer caught in the headlights look is gone now. We got rid of that in game 1. We're getting a little bit more comfortable. And so another wire-to-wire finish for Cleveland, but not as dominant a victory. Then you get to game 3, they go home and destroy the Cavaliers, just obliterate them. Game 4, much of the same, really take it to Cleveland, and they go home they go back to Cleveland now, this time on a mission to try to steal one, because they know if they're going to win this series, it's a brand new series, tied at 2, and it's the best out of 3, but 2 of them are going to be in Cleveland. You've got to win one over there if you're going to win this series. And they go back to Cleveland in game 5, and they fight and they scratch and they claw tooth and nail, and they put themselves in a position really on the backs of Paolo Banchero, who was spectacular in the game. They come within a bucket, essentially a Mobley block at the end of the game to secure the victory is essentially what was the difference in this game. It was a fantastic game going back and forth. Both teams, I think they were like, 13 ties, 17 lead changes. It was a crazy ball game, but ultimately the Cavaliers won the game 104-103. So now they take a 3-2 games lead. They go back to Orlando. And I tell you this all the time, and this is an old adage that will always ring true, especially in the NBA. The series doesn't start until the road team wins the game, because the home team who has the advantage, who has home court advantage, doesn't have to win on the road. All they got to do is win at home and they'll win the series. If Orlando goes back to Orlando and wins, which I think they will, because it's been that kind of a series, then they're going to have to go back to Cleveland and win in Game 7. And what you saw from them in Game 5 shows them that they're capable of going there and winning. Now they just got to get over the hump. I don't think they will, though. But you see the growth from Game 1 all the way to now Game 5, right? So totally different Magic team, totally different level of confidence. We'll see what happens in Game 6. I surmise that Orlando will win that game, send it back to Cleveland. I expect a Game 7 over the weekend. Meanwhile, the Knicks and Sixers. Wow, right? Wow. This has been a wacky series, first and foremost, because both teams have blown leads they had no business blowing at the end of ball games to lead to the other team stealing a victory that they shouldn't have gotten, right? The Knicks should not have won Game 2. They were down 5 with 17 seconds left. Like, there's no way you lose a game up 5 with 17 seconds left. And then we know what happened in that game. And then here, it's even worse for the Knicks. You're up 6 with 20 seconds left. There's no way you're supposed to lose that game. At home, no less. To give up a 4-point play, to then miss a free throw on the other end, and then give up a 3. And again, that 3 was a logo 3, granted. But you're playing drop coverage from that deep back with a guy who was piping hot throughout the evening. Tyrese Maxey literally saved the Sixers season. What a performance he put on. And I've talked about this. They're going to need guys to step up. I think the Sixers are their most dangerous when they get a contribution of some sort from what's his name? I can see his face. Shucks. The light-skinned wing. I can't think of his name. He was clutch, man. He made some big shots. He got off to a fast start, and then he made some big shots down the stretch as well. When he plays well, I think he scored like 18 points, 18 or 20 points. When he scores, when he's effective, when he's aggressive, Tobias Harris, thank you, Mar. When Tobias Harris is aggressive, they're a different team. They're a different team. And he was aggressive early, and he was aggressive late. Then I thought Kelly Oubre's contribution late. He had a layup where he was falling down that he made. He had another layup where if it was a better pass, he would have had an easy dunk in overtime, but he still was able to go to the other side of the basket and finish in traffic. He was huge, had an and one late in the ball game as well. So Oubre was huge. He was in double figures, and they need his scoring as well, especially with Embiid being compromised the way that he is. But this was all about Tyrese Maxey and his ability to make big shot after big shot after big shot. Every time it felt like the game was slipping away, he would make a shot, and then he would go on a little personal run and keep them in the ball game. Even down to the wire, when they were down 6, he comes down, hits the 4-point shot. The NBA reviewed it. The little 2-minute thing that they do where they that 2-minute report that they do at the end of ball games. They said that the referees missed the Maxey travel. I watched it like 3 more times. I still haven't seen the travel, but they said he traveled. It's no different than in game 2 where they came out afterwards and said, oh, we missed 2 fouls on Maxey, and we should have granted the 76ers a timeout. When they got the ball, when Maxey was on the ground, everybody was calling timeout. Maxey was calling timeout. Embiid was calling timeout. Nick Nurse was calling timeout, and nobody got a timeout. And I told you, I saw the official kind of just standing there with his hands like this, like he didn't know what to do. It was so loud, though. I will say that. But, the 2-minute report, who gives a shit? It's not going to change the outcome of the game. So what a performance by Maxey. The Knicks, if they lose this series, and I don't think they're going to lose this series. I still think they're going to win this series. Now, I think they just made it harder on themselves. Now they got to go back to Philadelphia and win. And I wouldn't be shocked if they went back to Philadelphia and won in 6. I don't know if this thing has to come back to New York in 7, but I wouldn't be shocked if they won in 6. If they lose game 6, they could very well lose this series because they should have lost, you could argue, every single game at home in this series. You could argue that. They've trailed by double figures at home in just about every single game at home in this series. So they should have lost game 2. They did lose game 5 at home. You're not safe in game 7. If you're the Knicks, take care of business on the road in game 6 and not have to worry about going back home to Madison Square Garden for game 7. Shit just got interesting, though, with that game not going in the Knicks' favor. You're up 6 in the final 20 seconds. You're up 5 with 2 minutes to go in overtime, and you blow both leads. It's just hard to fathom the Knicks losing that game. It almost feels like they're destined to lose this series, but I don't think that's the case. I think they're going to ultimately win this series and advance to the second round. But they lose game 6. It depending on the fashion in which they lose, I might change my mind. I said before the series started, I thought the Knicks would lose the series, but having seen how it's transpired, seeing how compromised Joel Embiid is, I just don't think the Sixers have enough. You can't expect Maxey to do what he did for 2 more games because that's essentially what it's going to take if Joel isn't going to be able to give you anything. That's what it's going to take. And unlike the games early in the series where there were 2 days off between games, now it's every other day. He's not going to have a chance to rest that knee. It just is what it is at this point. So he's compromised, man. He can't give you but so much. So, wow. That was good stuff. And let me just give a quick shout out to Derek White of the Celtics, man. I didn't watch the rest of that game. It got out of control in the first quarter, and that's all I needed to see. I said, okay, the Heat are waving the white flag. They just don't have enough. They gave you one. They made sure that they didn't get swept by hitting 23 threes in game 2, a franchise record, but they just don't have enough. But there's no way you're going to beat the Celtics if Derek White is going nuclear like he did in game 4 and then in the first quarter of game 5. You don't stand a chance if Derek White's going to do that. I don't know what he did the rest of the game. He could have not made any more shots. He already had 15 points or 18 points in the first quarter again. Like, what in the hell is going on, right? I don't know. I just know he was in one of those zones that players talk about. Like, you get in that zone and the basket looks like the ocean. And you just feel like there's no way. I just got to toss it up there. There's no way I'm going to miss. He was incredible in that series, and they advanced to the second round. Well, they'll take on the winner of Cavs and Magic. And the good thing is, any bumps and bruises that they have, including Porzingis, they're going to get some rest now because I expect that Cavs Magic series to go 7. So I think they'll get a little bit of a rest there too. But In any event, let's talk about K-Dot real quick, man. Euphoria. He dropped the track yesterday afternoon out of nowhere after people had been counting the days since Drake dropped push-ups, and the AI joint was whack. I don't know if we addressed that already. The AI shit Drake did was trash. Actually really disappointed in him doing that, but anyway. So Euphoria drops, and I'm going to talk about this on MusicHead University, so I'm not going to give you a lot here. I'll just say this. It was worth the wait. For me, personally. I can't speak for anybody else. I've seen people poo-poo it. I've seen others, react to it like how I listened to the shit at least 25 times today. I'm not even going to hold you, bro. Trying to decipher every diss in the track. That's, I told you, how I am. I get really anal about that kind of stuff. So I went back and I was listening to it and picking apart bar for bar. And I'm like, ooh, oh, Kendrick had a little bit of a sense of humor in this one too. This one was good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I'll say this, and then I'll save the rest for MusicHead. I was really nervous at the very beginning when he started off on some OJ shit talking. I was like, bro, we are not doing this on a diss track. Like, I felt like the dude that was like, yo, I ain't even gonna lie. They had us in the first half, right? I was like, bro, you had me on the first minute of the track. You had me. I was like, yo, what are we doing right now? But he the beat switched up real quick, and so did he. But anyway, I digress. We'll talk more about that on MusicHead. So if you haven't already done so, go ahead, subscribe to MusicHead University. There'll be a lot of content coming out. As now, I told y'all this. The month of May was going to signal a change for MusicHead University. I'm going to be a lot more aggressive over there because now we're getting into that brief window of NFL offseason. Like, this is truly the NFL offseason now. All right. May, June, and the first half of July is the true NFL offseason. Every other month from the back half of July all the way until May is NFL season. It's NFL season. So I got a chance to really be aggressive with MusicHead, and I'm going to. So it'll start tomorrow. That said, one of Washington's newest players, Johnny Newton, was on Twitter yesterday, and somebody sent me his tweet. They added me and sent me his tweet. So, he was asking about food spots in DC, in the DMV. He's a 300-pounder. He's a defensive tackle. He likes to eat, clearly. So he was like, yo, where the food spots at? Let me know. And so people were giving him suggestions. And, the reason that somebody added me is because I think a Cowboys fan jumped in there and was like, hey, get used to losing to the Cowboys twice a year. And he sent back a gif of a clown having a clown nose placed on his face. Like, get out of here with that trash, right? So that was funny. But that's not the reason I brought this story up. The reason I brought the story up is because he said so somebody tweeted at him, hey, you need to talk to Brian Robinson about where you should or shouldn't go. And he was like, hey, look, bro, I once was thinking about going to Maryland. Like, before I went to Illinois, I was almost committed to Maryland. So I've been here before. And he said, I'm not going to U Street or H Street ever again, right? And I got a little chuckle out of that because it got me to thinking, and it made me think of a story. So tell y'all a quick story. I think I told y'all this before. I may not have, but for my birthday, my wife took me to Lost Society, which is on U Street. I'd never been. First of all, why the hell y'all ain't tell me not to go to U Street? Okay. These are things when I told y'all I'm not from here. I just got here. Y'all, kind of give me the ins and outs. I know I'm not that close to the city, but if I decide to go to the city, y'all let me know what I should or shouldn't do, the do's and the don'ts of the area, right? So y'all just let me wander into DC like like I know where the hell I'm going and what's really good. And so we go to Lost Society. We went to a day party. It was great. Had a great time. Had fun. Everything was copacetic. And then it started to get a little dark. It wasn't dark outside, but they closed the roof. We were out on the little on the top level of Lost Society, a little balcony or whatever, having a great time. And then they closed the little roof or whatever that was over the top of us. So at that point, we was like, yeah, let's get out of here. So we called a Lyft to come get us. And we walk outside from Lost Society. And as we walk outside, there is caution tape preventing us from walking straight to the street. So you have to go around, and then there's this big crowd. There's the ambulance. And we look down because as you walk out, it's right there. So there's a puddle of blood. Somebody just got stabbed. And I said, oh shit, this is U Street, huh? And it just so happens that the people that we were with, they're from the area. So they were like, yeah, you probably shouldn't be around here after dark. I was like, oh, okay. Noted. After seeing that situation, you definitely won't catch me on U Street. I haven't been to H Street. I imagine it's very similar to U Street. Maybe there are varying degrees of how dangerous these streets may be, but you only got to tell me once, okay? And clearly I walked out. There's a body on the ground. There's blood. Paramedics are trying to put them onto a gurney. There's caution tape. The police are pushing us around because we're trying to get to the lift, but they don't want us contaminating their little, crime scene. I'm like, wait a minute. It was just peaceful 10 minutes ago when we were sitting upstairs and we could see out to the street. There was nothing going on. What has happened in 10 minutes? Anyway, I know now. So when he said, I'm not going to U Street, H Street, or nothing, I just came here to play. And he had a gif of Bobby Boucher. He said, I just came here to play foosball and win a championship. He said, I just came here to win championships and win foosball games. Something to that effect. And I got a kick out of that because I'm like, bro, you ain't lying about U Street. I can't vouch for H Street, but I can tell you a little bit about some U Street action. You won't catch me out there after dark. That's for damn sure. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the gem dropping session, shall we? Yeah, I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie TEE. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So I got to thinking, and I was going to do the status quo kind of lame shit for today's show at first, which is the 7 best draft steals. And I was like, man, everybody's doing that shit. So I was like, nah, I'm going to stay away from that. So I decided to go with the 7 best fits in the draft. This is according to me, your man Louie T. Obviously, some people, I think some people really have a preference. That's the thing I love about the draft is I've listened to at least a dozen reviews of the Commanders draft. Most of them positive. As a matter of fact, I'd say of the dozen, at least 7 or 8 of them were wildly positive. Like, oh, they killed it. Tremendous draft. Then there were like 2 or 3 that were like, I didn't think they did enough with what all the capital that they had, and I don't think they got any needle movers. And I was like, yeah, I don't agree. But that's the beauty of the draft, right? Everybody's entitled to their opinion, and you may not agree, but that's what it is. So these fits for me are based off of a combination of 2 things. One, and this is, I weigh the other thing less than this first item. This first thing, I don't weigh it as much, but it is a part of the equation. And it's the value, right? The value of the pick itself. I think it matters just a teeny eensy weensy bit. Not much. Really, what this is about is the team and schematically what it is they do, and the player and how that player fits into what they do, or philosophically what that organization represents and stands for, and what this player is and how he fits into the grand scheme of what it is they're trying to accomplish. So these are so I got 15 of these things, but I'm going to only give you 7 for my list because, when I get listy, I start listing things, and my lists are usually comprised of 7 items. But I do want to give you these other honorable mentions, because what I did was I just started jotting them down. Like, okay, I like this one. This is a great fit. This is a great fit. And then I went back and rearranged them in the way that I thought they should be ordered. And also what you have to take into consideration too is position. I think that's another thing that's weighted in this conversation is like quarterback. There's nothing more important than quarterback. So that's going to be weighted a little bit heavier than, say, a wide receiver, which is also important, but not as important as quarterback. Nothing is more important than quarterback, or running back, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, let's go through the honorable mentions that I have first. And let's start with some receivers. Jermaine Burton, this if you watched my wide receiver top 7 ranking for this year's draft class. I was pretty high on Jermaine Burton, probably higher on him than most people were. And I'm not ashamed of that. I think Jermaine Burton has tremendous NFL upside. I think he's going to be a much better pro than he was a collegiate player because he played with a lousy quarterback. And he was open oftentimes, and he just didn't get the football. The same could be said for Ricky Pearsall. And I said the same thing in my breakdown of him as well. Like, Graham Mertz sucked at Florida. And so Ricky Pearsall could have had an even bigger season last year if he would have just gotten the football thrown in his direction more. But same could be said for Jermaine Burton. He was the leading receiver for the Alabama Crimson Tide, however. And I think he has tremendous upside. I couldn't think of a better landing destination for him than Cincinnati. I just told you the Bengals, they just seem to get it. And they don't mind taking guys with some character issues. Clearly, over the years, they've been an organization that's handled those players very, very well. Whether you're talking about Vontaze Burfict, or you're talking about Pac-Man Jones, or you're talking about the running back that they just traded away, Joe Mixon, who had, some stuff that he had to clean up before, he could really get back into the good graces of a lot of people. And Burton had a little bit of a, checkered past, some things that you had to clean up, but the talent was definitely there. And knowing that there's no more of damn, what's the Pitt receiver name? I'm just blanking on people's names here of late, man. I don't know what the hell's going on. I can see his face. I just saw that there were two teams, like the Chargers and I think the Titans were interested. I don't know why I can't think of his name, but he's no longer there, and he had been there forever, right? And then T. Higgins looks like he could be, on the last, year of his Cincinnati Bengals career. If he's not traded, I don't see him being traded, prior to the season. Tyler Boyd, thank you, Money Shot 217. Tyler Boyd is no longer there, and T. Higgins is probably going to be gone after this season. I think Jermaine Burton is going to be a great sidekick for Jamar Chase. God, I think Jermaine Burton is going to be excellent in Cincinnati. That's just a great fit to me. Speaking of wide receivers and great fits, another honorable mention is Brian Thomas Jr. in Jacksonville. I remember talking to my guy Ree about Brian Thomas Jr. because we were talking about his Buccaneers on a show. I think it was last week prior to the draft. And he was like, man, he said he thought that the Bucs, if Johnny Newton was there was a lot of smoke around Johnny Newton to the Bucs. And if he was there, they were going to take him. And I was like, nah, I don't think that's going to happen. Right. I was like, I can't see y'all taking a defensive tackle 2 years in a row in the first round. That said, he was like, man, but I would love Brian Thomas Jr. I think he would complete our receiving core. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't think he's going to make it to your squad. Right. To me, I was like, he's definitely going to be gone by the time you get to 26, which is where the Bucs were selecting. And I said, a team like Jacksonville would take him. There's no way Jacksonville, after losing Calvin Ridley, would pass on a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. And sure enough, they traded back to Jacksonville and ended up taking Brian Thomas Jr. in the first round. I think it's a great fit. Like, when they lost Calvin Ridley, they lost the one guy that was truly like a speed receiver. Like, Christian Kirk isn't slow, but his speed isn't game-changing speed. Gabe Davis comes in, he can run, but again, he's a 4-5 guy with size. They need a guy that's a field stretcher, a vertical, top chaser, if you will, taking the top off the defense. And Brian Thomas Jr. is exactly that. And it's exactly what the doctor ordered for Jacksonville. And so I think that's a tremendous fit as well. Another honorable mention, Jarrett Wiley, the tight end out of TCU that was taken by the Chiefs. I think I'm going to make a somewhat, I don't want to say controversial. This isn't controversial. I think this is going to maybe raise a few eyebrows when I say this. But I know you guys saw that Travis Kelce just signed a 2-year extension, making him the highest paid tight end in the league. And rightfully so, and well-deserved, because he's established himself as a Hall of Fame tight end at this point. He wants to finish his career in Kansas City. There were rumors that he was, mulling over retirement. I think that was just more so to let the Chiefs know, hey, man, stop playing with me. I saw y'all break off Chris Jones. Let me get mine, and we straight. Aaron Donald did the same thing, threatened retirement, got his money, and he was good. Now, he did ultimately retire, but it wasn't for another 2 years, right, after they won the Super Bowl, and he threatened to retire. So 2 more years is what I think Travis Kelce has left. So I like the extension, but in saying that, there needs to be an heir apparent to that throne, because Mahomes has shown us he can exist without a dynamic receiver, but he can't exist without his running mate at tight end. And at some point, he's going to lose his Gronkowski, because Brady was never the same without Gronkowski. I think we can agree on that. That's why his first phone call when he got to Tampa was, "Hey, Rob, come on, bro. I need you." Jarrett Wiley is the perfect replacement for Travis Kelce. He literally, to me, in 3 years, when Kelce probably decides to hang it up, Jarrett Wiley will be ready to slide into the Travis Kelce role. And I think he will be just as dominant as Kelce was for the Chiefs when Kelce retires. You will already have seen the makings of Jarrett Wiley being a problem. And you're going to say, where the hell did this guy come from? I just need you to remember, Louie T told me this after the draft was over, that we effed up and we allowed the Chiefs to get their hands on Jarrett Wiley. And now we have two problems at tight end. And when Kelce leaves, he's going to slide into the Kelce role, and you're not going to get relief. That Travis Kelce is no longer there, because Wiley's going to seamlessly transition into the Kelce role. Watch. But I tell you, that was a really good pick by the Chiefs. Another honorable mention, we're going to stick with the... Nope. Now we're going to transition to the defensive side of the ball with this next honorable mention. And it's going to be Philadelphia Eagles cornerback Cooper DeJean. Getting him, the value was tremendous, getting him at 40 in the second round. But the fit was also spectacular. Getting a guy that is one of the better, zone corners in the draft. He can play corner, he can play nickel, he can play safety, that versatility. He can also return kicks. So there's a lot that you get with the Cooper DeJean package. They were so bad and so awful in the secondary last year. They got old overnight. And for a team that thinks they're Super Bowl caliber, that's the kind of value you're looking for in the draft. That's the kind of player you're looking for in the draft. To me, Cooper DeJean is a massive get for the Eagles, and he's a tremendous fit for Vic Fangio's defense. I talked about this already, but Vic Fangio, over the last 15 years or so, roughly, has been one of the best zone defensive masterminds, right? Now, teams have kind of figured out ways to attack his zone coverage a little bit more over the last, let's call it 5 years or so, last 3 to 5 years. They've gotten better at it, but Vic Fangio is still a problem as a defensive coordinator. And when you give him guys like Cooper DeJean, he becomes even more problematic. And we know the Eagles have a front that causes problems as is. So I think that's a really good fit there in Philadelphia. And I remember Daniel Jeremiah saying that one of the guys that he really wanted to see end up in a specific spot was Cooper DeJean in Philadelphia. And Daniel Jeremiah, I think he does I don't think. He does the Chargers games. He's from San Diego. He does the Chargers games in preseason. It's Ross Tucker that does the Eagles games. He's very biased, is Ross Tucker, when it comes to the Eagles. Another honorable mention, Pittsburgh Steelers, who I think it's almost unanimous that they had the best draft this year. They crushed it. It just seemed like every time they selected, the value is there, and they didn't run from it and they didn't shy away from it. And this was a guy that everybody else shied away from. And we later found out that he didn't have an ACL in one of his knees. And that scared off just about every team in the league except the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'm talking about linebacker out of NC State, Peyton Wilson. Steelers got this dude at the back end of the third round, which to me was grand larceny. Okay, this was theft at its highest order in this draft on the defensive side of the football, because you could argue that for most people, he was the number one linebacker on everyone's board in a generally weak linebacker draft class that had, to me, three guys that separated themselves from the pack: Junior Colson, Peyton Wilson, and Edgerrin Cooper. And I thought that Peyton Wilson was the best of that group. I thought Edgerrin Cooper was second, and I thought that Junior Colson was the third and final linebacker worth grabbing early. Now, there are other guys that can play, but those were the three that I felt like were at the top of the class with distance, I may add. For him to be the third one of that group taken, I think Colson ended up going earlier in the third, and Cooper went midway through the second to Green Bay. I was shocked that he was still there. Like, literally, this man was a fringe fourth-round pick. Steelers took him with about 3 picks left in the third round, like 98th overall or something to that effect. It was crazy he lasted that long. But we found out why, right? And we'll see if that impacts him. But just think about it. A lot of people forget the Steelers signed Patrick Queen this offseason. Then you put Peyton Wilson next to him. You could argue they now have the fastest linebacker core in the league right now. And when you couple those two inside with the combination of Highsmith and Watt on the edges, find me a better linebacking core than those four all on the field at the same time. Find me a better group. Good luck, because you can't. So that's going to be fun to watch. And that's a hell of a steal for the Steelers. No pun intended. And then my last honorable mention is Mike Sainristil, cornerback taken by the Washington Commanders in the second round. One of the best leaders, in this year's draft class. So the off the football field and football character off the charts. But the player that they're getting is equally as dominant. For a new group coming in like Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr., Joe Witt Jr. in particular, who prides himself on having defensive backs that take the football away, that tackle, that are physical, that can blitz. And that is something that Dan Quinn preaches. We're going to be fast. We're going to be physical. We're going to arrive violently. This won't be for everyone. One of the things that has been a bugaboo for the Commanders over the last 7 to 10 years, easy, is the inability to take the football away. They've been one of the worst teams in the NFL, especially here over the last 4 or 5 years, at creating turnovers. They just don't do it. And you brought in a guy in Mikey Sainristil that comes in as a ball magnet, a guy that takes it away. 6 interceptions last year. Former wide receiver converted over to the defensive side of the football, and he just gets it. I can't think of a better fit for a new regime coming in, looking to instill all of the principles and all of the traits that they're looking for on the defensive side of football than Mike Sainristil in Washington. It's a tremendous fit. So those are the honorable mentions. Okay. Now let's get to my top 7. And I'm not going to front. Got a little bitch in me here. I did it again. And I hate doing this, but I had to go with a 7A and a 7B. I hate when I do this. I did the same thing with my receiver list. I have to stop doing this, but I just couldn't leave either of these guys out. It's a top 7 list, not a top 8 list. I got to get my life together, I know. But my 7A, let's start with my 7B, as a matter of fact. 7B, seventh best fit, tied is center Zach Frazier, drafted out of West Virginia by the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers have been notorious for having the center position be this glamorous, dominant position, manned up by a guy for 7 to 10 years, and they set it and forget it at center. They've been doing that since the 70s with Mike Webster, feels like. Most recently and most notably, Pouncey was there for a very long time with Ben Roethlisberger. They've been looking for a guy ever since. Mason Cole is cool, but he's not real, right? He's all right, but he's not real. They need a guy. They got a guy in Zach Frazier. And to think this was a name that was being floated as a potential late first round selection, a team like Detroit made a ton of sense. He fits the Detroit Lions DNA profile. And if they didn't have such a dire need at corner, I truly believe Zach Frazier is a Detroit Lion. But because they had such a dire need, they already were struggling at the cornerback position. And then you had one of your starting corners get involved in a domestic violence situation where he was wanted by the police. They released him. They had no corners at that point. They had their first 2 picks for the Lions were corners. So that took them out of the Zach Frazier market. A team like Dallas could have easily been sniffing around Zach Frazier, knowing that they moved on from Tyler Biadasz this offseason and he signed with the Commanders. So they had a hole in their offensive line at center. And we know that the Cowboys are not afraid to spend early resources on the offensive line. As a matter of fact, they drafted Oklahoma tackle Tyler Guyton in the first round. They constantly are spending on resources on their offensive line. And I wouldn't have been shocked if they took, Zach Frazier or Graham Barton or Jackson Powers Johnson in the first round, but the value was there for Tyler Guyton. I don't have any issues with that. For a Steelers team that I think had the tackle market been ravaged by the time they got on the clock, they got the last of the big 6. To me, if I'm the Steelers and none of the big 6 were there, I would not have been willing to take a Tyler Guyton or Jordan Morgan at 20. I wouldn't have been willing to do that. I would have just said, I need center, and I would have picked from Graham Barton, JPJ, or Zach Frazier. And that could have been the pick at 20. Zach Frazier could have been the pick at 20. But as fate would have it, and they probably would have went with Graham Barton, is my guess. But as fate would have it, Troy Fautanu fell to them at 20. They'd made the right decision by taking him. And that was also an incredible fit for them. And then they dropped to the second round, and Zach Frazier is sitting there staring them in the face. Former high school wrestler, physical, nasty guy with an athletic profile that allows him to get out in front of, tosses and allows him to pull and get out in front of outside runs, screens. He's a guy that plays to the whistle, through the whistle, physical as all get out. He strikes me as the next guy up in the lineage of dominant Pittsburgh Steelers centers. I can't think of a better fit of a center with a team in this year's draft than Zach Frazier. You could almost take it a step further and say, I don't know if there's a better fit with a team and an offensive lineman, but I do think there's one. I do, and that player is going to be on this list a little bit further up. But there's not even a close second in terms of center and fit in this draft. He's the one. Great pick by the Steelers and great value, right? Second round for a guy that could have easily heard his name called day one, easily could have heard his name called early in day two. They get him late stages of the second round. So That's number 7A. 7B, excuse me. 7A. The San Francisco 49ers getting running back Isaac Guerendo in the 4th round. I talked about this the other day when we were going through every team's draft and kind of picking out what my favorite pick was. And I couldn't have picked a better spot for Isaac Guerendo. So you watch his tape. First of all, you watch him at the combine. And this guy goes apeshit from an athletic standpoint, from a testing standpoint. Runs the 4.3, 3.6 or 3.3 or whatever it was, blazes the 40. And I'm like, I remember after his combine performance, I'm talking to Commanders fans on my coverage of the combine. I'm like, yo, this is the kind of guy I'm talking about. And he doesn't have the type of production that's going to, set off bells and whistles. You can get this dude 4th, 5th round potentially. And he went in the 4th round, as we can see. But this running back class, I told y'all, the party starts in the 3rd round. Don't show up early. Don't show up too late, but don't show up early. To me, the value in this draft was 3rd and 4th round. After that, good luck. You're rolling the dice at that point. And I still think there was some, good running backs to be had in the 5th. After that, all right, good luck with whatever you got in the 6th or the 7th. That said, there are certain backs that just fit the Shanahan offense. Going back to his father and guys like Tatum Bell and Clinton Portis, these classic one-cut and go backs. Press, stick your foot in the ground, pursuit of the defense, cut back lane emerges, you stick your foot in the ground, and you haul ass to daylight. You've got to have that quickness to see the hole, stick your foot in the ground, and attack. And then you have to have the speed and burst to outrun everyone once you get daylight. They have Christian McCaffrey, and he's currently doing that. But he's not a 4.33 guy, right? Christian McCaffrey's a 4.47 dude. Isaac Guerendo, when you watched his tape, you didn't see the burst. You didn't see a lot of that speed because of how they were utilizing him. They used him as a power back. They used him in inside runs, and they didn't get him out on the perimeter enough. There wasn't a lot of zone there. He's your classic one-cut and go back, reminiscent of Tevin Coleman, who played with Kyle in Atlanta and then later on in San Francisco. He's the perfect back for Kyle's system. And I could see some big runs this upcoming season. McCaffrey's getting a little blow on the bench, a little breather. He just had an excellent possession. The defense created a 3-and-out. And they want to get, and they got to start preserving him a little bit. He was the workhorse last year. He got a lot of carries, did McCaffrey. A lot of touches. Forget carries, touches. They got to start, kind of weaning him off of all of those touches. They got to start scaling him back a little bit if they want him to last. Isaac Guerendo, I could see, a 62-yarder, a 73-yarder next year where he's coming in for McCaffrey, and on the first play of a possession, they go outside zone, and he presses, stops, cuts, sticks his foot in the ground, cuts it back, and runs the daylight and hauls ass. I think it's going to end up being a tremendous selection when it's all said and done. That's my 7A. Isaac Guerendo, running back out of Cincinnati, going to the San Francisco 49ers. Or was it Louisville? I think he was actually a Louisville Cardinal, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, my number 6 best fit. We're sticking with the running back position. This one is stupid, man. This one's dumb. They get on my damn nerves. At this point, like, when is enough? Okay, this shit is ridiculous. 2 years in a row they've done this shit. 2 years in a row they've done this foolishness. The Miami Dolphins select running back Jalen Wright out of Tennessee. Jalen Wright was the fastest running back in this year's draft class, I believe. Gorindo might have been faster than him. Let me check that time. Let me fact check myself. Last year, they got the fastest running back in the draft in Devin Achane. This year, if they didn't get the fastest, and I think Gorindo might have actually taken the title of the fastest back, they got the second fastest back, if that is in fact the case. Let's go to the running back position real quick, and I will solve this riddle. I know Gorindo ran like a 4.33 or a 4.36. So if Jalen Wright didn't run faster than that, then that's that. I think he ran like a 4.39 or something like that. So I think Gorindo might technically be faster, but only one way to find out. He ran a 4.38. I think Gorindo ran a 4.3. So my money is on Gorindo being faster than whatever the case may be. It doesn't really matter, but now I'm curious. You know how I do. I'm like a dog with a bone when it comes to this type of stuff. So I got to know, right? And this thing can't be moving any slower. This NFL site is struggling. It's been struggling all day long. I don't have time. So I think Gorindo, I'm gonna look up his 40 time on my phone. I'm not waiting on this NFL site. This thing been tripping all day. Every time I've been trying to use it, it's just moving slow, which means I'm probably not the only person been using this site over the last 48 hours. Isaac Gorindo 40 time 4.33. I thought it was 4.33. So they got the second fastest back in the draft, did the Miami Dolphins, after getting the fastest back in the draft last year and having arguably the fastest running back in the league already on their roster in Raheem Mostert. Like, how much speed do you possibly need if you're the Dolphins? Again, I talked about this with the Commanders fans. The good teams in the league don't run away from their strengths and say, oh, we got enough of that. No, they take their strengths and make them stronger. And that's what the Dolphins did here. This is a bit of overkill, though, right? With Jalen Wright. But I will say this, Devin Achane did get hurt last year. And when he got hurt, they were a different offense. Not that they still didn't have Raheem Mostert in there kicking ass, but you know what's better than one explosive dynamic back? Two. You know what's better than two explosive dynamic backs? Three. Now they have three. They've got the fastest team in the NFL offensively. It's not close. They've got a track team. Their offense literally could line up, and I think they could give some real Olympic 4x4 teams hell. Straight up. I really, truly do. They got some dudes that can flat out fly, and Jalen Wright adds his name to the mix. I almost want to say, why? 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 But I get it. I know why. Stop asking. I know why. It's a hell of a fit. Hand in glove. Jalen Wright to Miami is number 6. Number 5. So I talked about an offensive lineman being a perfect fit earlier, and there was one guy that was a better fit than Zach Frazier to the Steelers. And that's going to be offensive tackle J.C. Latham of Alabama going to the Tennessee Titans at 7. This is, to me, when I think of Tennessee Titans football, I think of physical run game. When I think of physical run game, I think of J.C. Latham. When I think of the Titans, I think of offensive linemen like J.C. Latham. So I couldn't think of a better fit. Like, we were thinking about the Chargers and, Jim Harbaugh wanting to run the ball. And so naturally everybody's like, yeah, JC Latham. I fell into the trap, but I thought they were going to trade back. So I thought Alt would be gone and they would be just as comfortable with JC Latham. Well, they didn't move back and they wanted Joe Alt and they got their guy and he's going to come in and he's going to be fantastic for them. But the Titans are a different team. They have to run the ball, and it's going to be interesting watching them with no Derrick Henry because we've gotten so used to King Henry out there. And, I thought that the running back Tajay Sharp last year from Tulane played really well, so much so that they felt comfortable enough moving on from Derrick Henry. And look, he was getting older, and it was time, right? They knew they needed to move on. But they're still going to run the hell out of the football, which is why they went out and they signed Tony Pollard in free agency, because they're going to run the shit out of the football, are the Titans. That's what they do. And JC Latham is going to allow them to do exactly that. There was no more dominant run blocking tackle in this draft. Although I love me some Talisa Fuaga, he wasn't more dominant in the run game than JC Latham. This is a man mover right here. And when I think of man movers, I think of the Browns and I think of the Titans. So this to me is a tremendous fit for the Tennessee Titans. So that's number 5. Number 4, we had talked about this fit potentially. I thought it was a little early, and I was like, I could see it happening, but it's a little early. But I kept telling Commanders fans, there's no way that this guy makes it to the 3rd round. What I didn't know and what I couldn't know is that the Panthers were, where there was smoke, there was definitely a bonfire that turned into a forest fire, because the Panthers were locked in on this guy just as much as we thought they were. We weren't sure, but we were saying that there was a chance, and Panthers fans were adamant that this was their guy, and it turned out to be their guy, all right. They traded back into the 1st round to ensure that they got their guy. I'm talking about South Carolina wide receiver Xavier Legette going to Carolina. This was a tremendous fit from every aspect that you could try to break this down. 1, you're getting a team that was void of a true number 1 receiver. Although I will say this, I don't know if you guys saw what was Adam Thielen. I don't know if you saw Adam Thielen's numbers from last year. And I watched him last year, and Adam Thielen still played at a high level, much better than he had played the year prior, when Vikings fans were like, he's washed. He's done. He's cooked. He looked like the old Adam Thielen last year. He was getting open, right? Open enough. They spent a 2nd round pick on a Ole Miss receiver that was they reached, right? They thought they could get a guy to come in and overachieve. I think they reached. Now that they have Xavier Legette, maybe that receiver they took in the 2nd round out of Ole Miss can now be their 3rd option, and he may now be where he's supposed to be. But with that said, Legette is coming off of his lone season in college football where he was the guy. And boy, did he take full advantage of it. Now, he's extremely raw. He's not a great route runner. None of that, yada, yada, yada. But the dude can flat out fly. He's got some size on him. He is physical. He offers you, return ability if you want to do that. I don't see them doing that with their number 1 receiver. You had an offense last year that was void of a true number 1 threat. Now you have that. And he's from Carolina, South Carolina, so he's staying close to home. It just makes too much sense, Xavier Legette being in Carolina with the Panthers. It just makes way too much sense. So much so that the Panthers said, hey, Buffalo, let me get that 30-second pickup off you, just to make sure that nobody tries any funny business and tries to get our guy. So Xavier Legette going to the Carolina Panthers is my number 4 fit in this year's draft class. Checking in at number 3. I talk about how important the quarterback position is and what it means for teams. And yes, Caleb Williams going to Chicago, that's great, but we still don't know what's going to happen with Shane Waldron, and is he going to be a great fit for Caleb Williams? So we don't know if that's a great fit or not, but we love what they've surrounded Caleb Williams with in Chicago and the pieces that will be around him. In Washington, we love what the Commanders potentially could do. We still don't know about the offensive line, but we like some of the weapons that we like the weapons he's surrounded with, and we think he's going to be a great fit with offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, but you're not sure about the offensive line. To me, the New Orleans Saints getting Spencer Rattler in the 5th round, which to me is tremendous value. We were having a conversation. Do you remember last week? We had a conversation about 2nd-round quarterbacks, and there were 2 in particular: Bo Nix, Spencer Rattler. And we like, hey, the 2nd-round market is heating up, and the teams like the Giants and the Raiders were meeting, and the Seahawks were meeting with these quarterbacks, anticipating that they would get to the 2nd round and they would have an opportunity to maybe select one of these guys on day 2. Well, as fate would have it, 6 quarterbacks went in the first 12 picks, an unprecedented amount coming off the board. Literally, on average, every other pick was a quarterback to start the draft for the first 12 picks. Insane. So clearly, this whole 2nd-round market that I talked about developing and materializing never did. But there was one guy still left, Spencer Rattler. Who was going to get him? Raiders, you got a shot to get him. Raiders like, nah, we good. Seattle, you had been sniffing around. You interested? Nah, we good. Giants, what says you that don't even bring us up? We got Drew Lock. We ain't tripping. Okay. So this went on for 5 rounds. 5 rounds that everybody said, nah, we good on Spencer Rattler, man. We'll pass. I told you, and I called him the same thing I called Sam Howell back in 2022 when he went in the 5th round as well. I said, this guy has a chance to be the wild card of the quarterback position in this year's draft class because he's super talented. Super talented. But apparently teams were turned off by the Netflix special when this kid was in high school. Like, he's so far removed from that. But again, I say that and I'm trying to make excuses for him, but I don't know. I've heard nothing but good things, but teams could have talked to people at Oklahoma, could have talked to people at South Carolina, and that's who you really need to talk to, because I've heard nothing but good things from anybody at South Carolina that's spoken about Spencer Rattler and talked about how he's changed and how he's a much better teammate, and he's done a 180 from what you saw on the QB1 documentary. But apparently teams were turned off and they weren't interested. Well, Derek Carr stinks, and I use the word stinks loosely. He's a very solid NFL quarterback, but he is the kind of guy that drives you nuts. Okay, I couldn't think of a quarterback last year that had more empty calorie 300-yard performances than Derek Carr. So many people used to get on Kirk Cousins about he's a stat patter. He's getting a lot of garbage time stats. Felt like Derek Carr was getting a lot of 300-yard games in inconsequential performances where you go, bro, really? You threw for 306 with no touchdowns? Y'all scored 16 points. And what did you do exactly there, buddy? And another thing, Derek Carr is now a guy that gets injured often, it feels like. So that's another thing. And he was definitely oft injured last year. I just think this is a great pick for the Saints. Again, much like Sam Howell, I don't know if it'll work, but I think Sam Howell would have worked. I don't need to go down this rabbit hole, but I think he would have worked with, better coaching in Washington. But you get good coaching in New Orleans. And here's the thing that I feel bad for Spencer Rattler with is that staff could be fired if the Saints don't win this year. There were questions about Dennis Allen and the rest of that staff, Carmichael and all those guys. This past year, this offseason, like, were they in trouble? And that was quickly put to rest. But those whispers get a lot louder if you have another lackluster year. They spent a lot of money on Derek Carr. And if it doesn't work, and they deem the coaching staff to be, somewhat responsible for that, heads could roll. But I just love this pick for the Saints. I think this is a great fit because they got some talent, man. And you put a guy like Spencer Rattler with the talent that they currently have. Not that Derek Carr isn't a solid quarterback, as I mentioned, but Derek isn't running anywhere. He's not extending. They got the kind of receivers that if you put a guy out there that can move, that can extend, make something happen off script, which Derek is not great at, they could be dangerous, could the New Orleans Saints. I actually really, really like that fit. Rattler to the Saints. And I love the value of the pick, getting him in the 5th round. You didn't even have to spend, really, to get it. Now we get to the top 2. And number 2 for me is the Kansas City Chiefs getting their hands on wide receiver Xavier Worthy in the 1st round. Wow, 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 wow. The rest of the league all sighed at the same time, like, when that pick was made. When they saw Buffalo trade back with Kansas City, everybody and their mama knew who they were coming up for at that point. And there was one, I think I saw this on, I think it was Bleacher Report. Of course, it was an anonymous executive, but he said his response when he saw the Bills trade out of 28, I think it was 28, and allowed the Chiefs to come up from 28 to 20 to 32, or it allowed the Chiefs to come up from 32 to 28, or wherever the Bills were. His response was a simple F me. Like, are you serious? The Chiefs were on the ropes last year because they didn't have any explosiveness offensively that could catch. Valdez-Scantling could run. He just couldn't catch. And the rest of those dudes were solid, but they weren't game changers. Rashee Rice can catch, but he's not fast. So they struggled in getting those explosive plays. Everything that they did last year was difficult, right? They had to earn it. It had to be a 9 or a 10 or 11 play drive, because those plays that they used to get with Tyreek Hill, with Sammy Watkins, with Mecole Hardman, those explosive plays that once upon a time were always there, no longer were. And so it became tough because all it took was, and they were one of the most penalized teams on the offensive line due to their right tackle that they got from Jacksonville, Jawan Taylor. This guy was a walking penalty machine. And then on the other side, you have a guy that's probably even worse than him in Donovan Smith. And so it's nothing for you to be marching down the field on this beautiful drive, and then Donovan Smith gets called for holding, or Jawan Taylor gets called for a false start. And now your drive gets kind of derailed and goes sideways. And now, what was once a promising drive looked like you were headed for a touchdown. Now you got to settle for a 56-yard, Harrison Butker field goal, right? The Chiefs were on the ropes, and their defense bailed them out for the first time in the Mahomes era. And you felt like if we could just get one more year of Mahomes on the ropes, now you just lost L'Jarius Sneed. This defense is not going to be the same. And Kelsey's a year older. Rashid Rice got into some trouble off the field. Who knows what happens with him? More likely than not, he'll be right there when the season starts. He'll handle that legal issue after the season. But you just don't know. You felt like, man, we could be on to something here with the Chiefs. And then you let them get Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy. And Xavier's the one where you go, oh my stars. They got Tyreek Hill all over again in a bigger frame. Now, he's not Tyreek Hill. Let's just set the record straight. There's only one of those. There's only one cheetah. But damn if he ain't a Bobcat. Did you used to play the Nintendo game? The track and field Nintendo game? And remember the two hardest animals to beat, or, well, the two hardest track players, computers to beat. One was named Cheetah and the other was Bobcat. Cheetah was in the 6 lane, Bobcat was in the 5 lane, and in order to win, you were running those hurdles and you had to run, jump. Run. Yeah, see, some of y'all too damn old to remember that. I'm showing my age right now. But the second fastest was Bobcat, and Cheetah was the fastest. Xavier Worthy is the Bobcat. He fast as shit. And you let Mahomes get his hands on him. Andy Reid and company. If that ain't a fit, like almost everybody to a man prior to the draft was projecting Xavier Worthy. It got to the point where people were trying to give them other receivers because you wanted to be different, because everybody was like, yo, they're going to get Xavier Worthy. So they were like, nah, they ain't going to get Worthy. They going to get Pearsall. Or you going to give them this receiver. They going to get Adonai. Like, you were trying to be different because Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs was getting played out so much that you wanted to be different. Hell, I fell victim and prey to that. I was like, nah, I ain't giving them Xavier Worthy. I done seen 29 mock drafts and 27 of them got the Chiefs getting Xavier Worthy. So I traded out of the 32nd pick to the Saints to try to replenish the cornerback position and get Marshawn Lattimore, right? That's me trying to be different. The Chiefs was like, nah, everybody else had that shit right. We going to get Xavier Worthy. Hell, what you talking about? Oh, man, that's a great fit. They did it again. Anyway, I digress. That's the number 2 best fit in this year's draft class. And number 1, drum roll, please. A guy that I've been talking about more than any other player being a great fit in this particular offense with that coach in the scheme and what they needed to try to make their offense go. And I brought this dude up 50 million times, and I said, I can't think of a single better fit in this year's draft class than this player with that team. I said it over and over again. I did not expect it to happen as early as it did, but I expected it to happen at some point, and I even mocked it in my draft. Now, I had that team trading back and then making it happen, but whatever the case may be, it happened. Of course, I'm talking about Oregon quarterback Bo Nix to the Denver Broncos. I told you guys at least 20 times during the process. And as we got later into the process, as we got closer to the draft, I was even more adamant. Bo Nix to Sean Payton in Denver is the equivalent of Drew Brees in Sean Payton's mind's eye. Denver probably made a couple phone calls to see if they could get up, right? But they didn't have enough. They didn't have a second-round pick. They didn't have any additional first-round draft capital. They were never in the mix, okay? You got nothing for me right now. But they also knew in their back pocket, they had Bo Nix. Nobody else was going to take Bo Nix. And he's not for everybody. But when you talk about Sean Payton's scheme, which requires the quarterback to play on time, on schedule, within the rhythm of the offense, quick release, ball out into the receiver's hands accurately with an opportunity for run after catch. I don't know if there was a better quarterback that personified that in this year's draft class than Bo Nix. We talked about him setting the NCAA record for the highest completion percentage in a single season, and a lot of his throws being at or around the line of scrimmage or underneath, not having the strongest arm. Drew Brees didn't have the strongest arm, but what Drew did was he made up for it with timing, precision, accuracy, ball placement, and decisiveness. And those are all traits of Bo Nix. And Sean Payton has been looking for that ever since Drew Brees left, including in New Orleans. Then when he got to Denver, he was looking for it. Russell Wilson, he inherited him. He was not happy about what he was getting out of Russ. And now Bo Nix shows up, and I said, Bo Nix is a Denver Bronco. Bo Nix is a Denver Bronco. And that's exactly, and I didn't think they would do it at 12. Felt a little early, but you know how I feel. Get your guy when you feel the need to get your guy. And that is exactly what the Denver Broncos did. And I can't think of a better selection. In this year's draft class, in terms of fit, I can't think of a better fit than Bo Nix to the Denver Broncos. So that is my list, and I am sticking to it as we transition into our next segment. Y'all know what it is. Of course, you're making some social media maneuvers, and I'm a midnight marauder. Y'all up late with your man Louie T. Let's make it great since y'all up late. Let's get to it. We start off. Oh, yeah. Let me go ahead and throw the banner up. Y'all know how this works. We got a little time tonight. So we'll try to get to as many hashtags as we can. If you're out there, you want your comment read on the air, if it is pertinent, and really it's anything goes, right? At this point, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air, and we will discuss it if it is in fact pertinent, right? But if you want to ensure that your comment is read, the only way to do that is to super chat. And we'll get to the supers. We'll get to the mob members first and their comments. And then if we have time, because sometimes, I get a little long-winded on some of these comments that are super chats and mob comments. And then I get through those. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Let's go ahead and wrap this thing on up with garbage time. So y'all know how this works. Telly's World. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Telly's World writes, what's good, Lou? What's going on, Telly? You know what? Shout out to you, Telly. I watched your first episode you sent me. Damn, I forgot the name of the boxer you had up there, but I definitely checked it out and watched it. It was good, man. You did a good job. It was good. So congratulations for that, man. A lot of times half the battle is just starting, right? A lot of people talk about wanting to do this. It's not easy, and people find that out after the fact. They think it's easy. We make it look easy. Some of us make it look easy, but they didn't realize how much work it is and how consistent you have to be. And you're not going to just jump on and have a bunch of people watching. You got to be persistent and you got to persevere. And so you conquered half the battle, which is starting. Which NBA team and situation would you compare to the Commanders? I think I would compare us to the Orlando Magic right now. When I look at what the Magic are, what they were, and where they've come from. Once proud organization, right? Whether you go all the way back to Penny and Shaq, or then with Dwight Howard, Turkoglu, and Rashad Lewis and all those guys when they made it to the NBA Finals. There, they've fallen on hard times, and they needed a whole overhaul, essentially. They blow the whole thing up. They start over. They start getting all of these young pieces. They finally hit it with my guy from Duke, Paolo Banchero. And they got a new coach, Jamal Mosley, who I think is in his second or third year. I'm not mistaken. And so they think they've figured out the recipe. It's a relatively young team for the most part. Struggled early. You go through the growing pains of a young team, obviously. And then they were able to put all the pieces together. You had the guy that you draft early on that, didn't do what you thought he was going to do. Elsewhere, you bring him to Orlando. You rebuild his shot, kind of give him a little bit of confidence, bring him off the bench. You got all these guys that now they're filling in the gaps with some of these veterans, like a Joe Ingles, right? But the focus, right? The focal point is Wagner and Banchero, right? And so I see like some similarities here. And I see Mosley as Dan Quinn. And I see that young team now getting to the point where now they're ready to try to win a playoff series. I don't think they're I don't think they're going to win this series, but they're competing their asses off right now. So I kind of see us as the Orlando Magic right now, a young team that has to grow, and we're turning over the roster, and you're trying to figure out some things kind of on the fly. So that's kind of what I see us as right now. 1/6 Devil Doc. Thank you for the super chat, or thank you for being a member of the MOBB for 32 months. Who writes, Lou. These X-Men episodes are effing great. Can't wait for you to watch them and react to them on the pod. A piece of advice: when you finally do watch, do it early in the day. I'm still not right. All right. So I've heard so much about these, and I'm dying. I talked to my daughter today, and I was hoping she'd give me the green light. So I talked to my daughter today. I was like, yo, you don't want to watch these X-Men. You don't want to watch X-Men. She's like, yeah, I'll watch it. I was like, damn. I wanted her to be like, nah, you can go ahead. So I could just, and I might just watch the joint without her. And then if she want to watch it, I'll just watch it again. Right. I'm getting to that point. I'm getting antsy now. For those of you who don't know what he's talking about, X-Men 97. Marvel put out the series, and for 90s babies like myself who grew up on that X-Men series, I've heard nothing but great things about it, and I'm finked up. I ain't even gonna front. And I'm kind of saving it because I know we're about to, I just talked about this at the top of the show. We're about to go through a patch here where there will be nothing on and there will be nothing to do. And I'll need to pass the time. And that's when I'll be able to reach into my what's the word I'm looking for here? I can't think of the word that I wanted to use, but I'll be able to reach into this group of items that I've put away for safekeeping for a rainy day that I can pull out. One of them is Hard Knocks with the Miami Dolphins in season. I haven't touched that, and I want to. There's that Patriots series, the little dynasty one. I'm debating on whether I want to watch it or not. I've heard mixed reviews on that. I still think I want to watch it though. And then X-Men 97 is up there as well, right? So I got a few that I can pull out at moment's notice. So yeah, I'll check it out. You know I'm going to watch it. And you know I can't wait to watch it. And I've heard nothing, as I mentioned, nothing but good things about it. So and I've heard it's some sad stuff too. So I'm like, y'all got me kind of like on the edge a little bit. And I haven't even watched the first episode yet. All I've watched is the preview. And I got chills watching the preview. Anyway, Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Chris, thank you for your generosity as always. Can't thank you enough. My guy Chris writes, hey Lou, what's up, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the fam. 2 questions. What do you think LeBron will do this offseason in terms of staying with the Lakers or go elsewhere? How significant is the Porzingis injury to the Celtics' title chances? So LeBron's playing that game right now that LeBron loves to play. First of all, he loves to be the center of attention. I don't know if you saw the quote that he had about 2 weeks ago where he's like, or 3 weeks ago, I think it feels like now. Man, I don't know how much more I got left. Yeah, right, buddy. First of all, I know you love basketball too much to quit while you can still play and be effective. Nobody quits that has the competitive juices that you had, or Kobe or Jordan. Jordan quit a couple of times, but I bet you if he had to do it all over again, he wouldn't have quit when he did those 2 times because he came back every time because he loves basketball. And once you can't play anymore, it sucks. So LeBron is going to play until the wheels fall off. And clearly he can still play at a high level. No, he's not the same LeBron that he was even 3 years ago. And he can't give you, 42 minutes one night and then 48 the next night like he once could. But he's still dominant. He's still a problem. He can still take over games in small stretches. And, every so often he can still put a 40 burger on your head. But to be dramatic, like, I don't know how much I got left. Bro, you got at least 2-3 years left if you want to play, right? When you say I don't know how much longer I got left, that sounds like, hey man, I might have one more. Like, remember when like Kobe and some of these other guys told us this is it. So you got the farewell tour and every stadium that they went to, teams would put up a montage, and some teams would even give gifts. I think I remember one time, I don't know if it was Kobe or if it was like Tim Duncan or somebody. Everybody knew that they were retiring, and somebody got that player a rocking chair, right? So LeBron's not at that stage yet. And trust me, when he gets there, he'll let everybody know, like, this is it, because he'll want to be showered with praise and serenaded at every opposing stadium with tributes. He wants that, right? He's still got 2-3 good years left in him if he wants to play. And I know he wants to play because he's at his core, he's a hooper, man. And I really think he would prefer to stay in LA. And he wants to put pressure on them to give him a chance to win another chip. I think he wants to have another legitimate shot to win. And they don't have a bad team. They, I told him he just took the path that was the least favorable for him. If they would have took on OKC, I think they had a chance to move on to the second round. But that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is LeBron has always been about his money. He's not one of these dudes that will take less to help build a team. You figure that shit out on your own. I'm trying to be a billionaire. I'm trying to be one of the wealthiest men in America when it's all said and done. and he's a businessman, and he's always been a businessman, and he's a businessman first. So best believe LeBron is not taking a pay cut. He's going to try to maximize this last contract that he signs. And if the Lakers want him, they're going to have to spend top dollar to keep him. And he's going to weigh his options. But I think when it's all said and done, LeBron came to LA for the opportunity the first time around. He came to LA because of what that could open up for him from a business standpoint. Yeah, he wanted to give his sons a better opportunity to play more competitive basketball in an environment that was going to allow them to really get as good as they could possibly get. But it was really more about he wanted to be an executive producer. He wanted to be in the mecca of the entertainment industry and start to branch out and do other things. And LA allows him to do that. And that hasn't changed. LA is very convenient for him. And I don't see him leaving. He'll threaten to leave and he'll force LA to give him what he wants because they know without LeBron James, they go back to being what they were post Kobe Bryant. And that ain't shit. And they don't want that. They want to ride this LeBron thing till the wheels fall off. I've even heard that they said, bro, we'll draft your son if we have to. Just don't leave us. So that's the kind of power he wants. He wants that leverage. He's got the Lakers by the balls. I think he ultimately stays in LA when it's all said and done. I can't see him going anywhere else. He had a chance to go to Golden State. And he turned down that opportunity. So that tells me he's pretty comfortable where he is. You know, he'll stay in LA, I believe. How significant is Porzingis' injury to the Celtics title chances? I think it's very significant. Now, the injury itself isn't as significant as it could have been, but the fact that he's already being essentially ruled out for the second round means that it's a pretty significant injury. If they don't have Porzingis, they can't win the title. It's as simple as that. The whole reason now, the roster itself is damn good, and I still think they have a legitimate shot of getting to the finals without Porzingis. But to win it, they need him because the whole reason for going to get him was to break up what everybody felt like was the biggest Achilles heel the Celtics had, which essentially was your two best players essentially are the same player. Tatum and Brown are essentially wings. And if you set a pick, like pick and rolls only work if you get a switch that is favorable for each of the players, right? Whether it's, to me, the best pick and roll in the NBA right now is Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. And no matter what you do, if you switch, you're going to get a mismatch. Either Jokic is going to have a smaller defender on him, or Jamal Murray is going to have a bigger defender on him, and he's going to be able to go to work, right? To me, that's the best pick and roll in the NBA right now. Because Jokic is such a playmaker that you're going to lose whatever decision you decide to make. He's going to make you wrong. But that's the advantage of having a big that can do the things that Jokic can do, right? The problem with the Celtics is your two best players that you're running pick and roll. Like, nobody's afraid of Al Horford. He's 97 years old. So if he's setting the pick, who cares? There's no mismatch. Yeah, Tatum might get a smaller defender on him, or not a small defender. He may get a bigger defender on him, but not much bigger. It's not like Horford has a 7'2" guy on him. He's probably got like a 6'8", 6'9" guy on him. So that switch isn't going to get Tatum the matchup he's looking for, or Brown, or whomever. So the Celtics usually were running pick and roll with Tatum and Brown. Well, you're essentially switching two wings. And you might be switching the team's best defender onto the guy with the ball now, right? Depending on who's setting the screen, yada, yada, yada. So I said all of that to say this. Porzingis was a necessary piece because he entered in the pick and roll now where you get a decisive mismatch either way. If Tatum is running pick and roll with him, now Tatum's going to get a bigger defender that he can either take to the hoop or create distance for the step back, or that guy's playing drop coverage and now Tatum can walk into a three comfortably and shoot, right? Same with Brown. And if they switch, now Porzingis has a smaller defender. He can just shoot right over him, back him down, get to whatever spot he wants. It changed everything for Boston. Now they got a guy that can pick and pop out to the three-point line, extend defenses, open up the lane. It just creates so many mismatches and so much floor spacing for the Celtics. He is vital to their success. It's not a coincidence that they get Porzingis and they shoot to the top of the Eastern Conference and it's not even close. And that's not to poo-poo the trade for one of the best on-ball defenders on the perimeter in the NBA, in Drew Holiday. That's not to poo-poo Hauser stepping up off the bench and being a more consistent night in, night out guy they can go to. And same with Peyton Pritchard stepping up. That's not to dismiss those guys. But the true difference maker this year in the Celtics' success has been Porzingis. He's not there. You now don't have the advantage that he created for you. So, yeah, it's a pretty big deal. And yes, Journey Reed, the archives. That's exactly what I was trying to think of. I couldn't think of the damn phrase archives. I told you I don't know why I've been just blanking here of late. Archives is what I got all of these kind of sitting there in the archives, and I can pull them out once we hit this kind of dead patch. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy, Chris, writes, hey, Lou, 2 questions. What's up, Chris? Do you think Mike Trout is the greatest baseball player of this generation? And if not, who would you select and why? How much of a gap is there between the 49ers and the second best team in the NFC, and which team is it? So here's my problem with Mike Trout. And yes, I would say that he probably has been. But here of late, Mike Trout can't stay healthy to save his life. And I do think this is impacting his legacy, so to speak. Now, look, Trout was a beast for the first, 7-8 years of his career and kind of established himself as the guy in Major League Baseball. But here over the last 4 years, I don't think this guy's played in 100 games in the last 4 years. And this year is right on pace to do what he's done each of the last 3 or 4 years. He's already hurt again, right? Timetable undetermined as to when he'll be back, but he's out again. Typical Mike Trout. And he was off to a crazy start. Typical Mike Trout. Showing everybody, reminding everybody why he's one of the best, if not the best player in the league. And then just like that, he's gone again. Which is why Shohei Ohtani was like, I got to get the hell out of here because I can't trust Trout to stay healthy to help me. I got to go. That's why he bailed. Yes, I think he has been the best player of this generation. I do. But how quickly we can forget if he can't stay healthy to finish out his career. And there are other guys that have a chance to be really good for a very long time. But yeah, I think, yes, he is. But to make the point that I'm making about how he's starting to lose that luster, ESPN did a list of the top, I think, 100 baseball players or something, top 50, whatever it was. And Trout I don't think he was in the top 20. And there were players that were outraged by the list. They were like, this list isn't even credible. Mike Trout's not in the top. Mike Trout should be number 1, and he's not even in the top 20. And ESPN defended the list by saying, bro hasn't been healthy in like 3 years. What you want us to do? Anyway, as far as the 49ers are concerned and where they are, yes, they're the number one team in the NFC and have been for quite some time now. I mean, if you go back to 2019, the 49ers have been in the NFC Championship game every single year except for 2020, and that's when their entire team got injured. Started with Nick Bosa, and it just trickled down to just about every player on their team. And they weren't themselves. But 19, they went to the Super Bowl. 21, NFC Championship game. 22, NFC Championship game. 23, Super Bowl. So, yes, they are the creme de la creme in the NFC. Now, as far as who's number two and where the gap is, I don't think the gap is as wide after last year. I would have told you that going into, you know what? I don't think the gap has ever been super wide because Brock Purdy is their quarterback, and while he played really well, we had questions. I think he answered a lot of those last year, especially in the playoffs. But still, Philadelphia 2 years ago beat them and went to the Super Bowl. So you couldn't say, well, there's a gap between them and Philadelphia. Philadelphia beat them even though Brock Purdy got hurt. They injured him. It's not like he just got injured on his own. They put him out of the game, right? So you went into the season last year thinking Philadelphia is right up there. Dallas is right up there because Dallas should have beat San Francisco in the playoffs in 2022, if you recall. Dallas should have won that game. They blew that game. And so there wasn't any real gap between those teams. You could even argue that San Francisco wasn't at the top of the food chain going into last season. The Eagles were. This year, but I've always kept San Francisco at the top because you know what my mantra is: do it again. And San Francisco does it every year, and the Eagles clearly didn't do it again, right? That's always my thing is, hey, that was cute. Do that shit again. This year, I don't feel like there's a gap because even though they won and made it to the Super Bowl, they should have lost to Detroit. They were down 24-7 to the Lions, and they were getting mollywopped by Green Bay and should have lost to that game too if the Packers didn't kind of self-implode down the stretch of that game. So I don't think the gap is that wide. I don't. And but I do think they're the team to beat in the NFC. I will say that. And so I think Detroit is right there. Clearly, they've established themselves. Again, do it again, Detroit. Last year was cute. People thought you were coming, right? They thought they saw this emergence from the Lions, but we weren't sure. You still snuck up on some teams. Now everybody's looking at you like they made a statement week 1 last season, did the Lions, going to Kansas City, going to Arrowhead, and beating the Chiefs. Minus Chris Jones, but still, they made a statement, and that set the tone for their entire year. Now teams are going to be gunning for the Lions right out of the gate. Like we're treating you as the upper echelon of the NFC. Now let's see how they handle that. They're no longer the hunter; they're the hunted. But the Lions are right there. They easily could have been in the Super Bowl representing the NFC this past season. So they're right there. You don't want to discount Philadelphia, but there've been a lot of changes to their organization, and so it's hard for me to just assume that they're going to go back to where they were the season prior, but they're in the mix. I'd put Green Bay in that discussion. If Jordan Love is going to, again, do it again, right? Like that shit we saw in the playoffs was chef's kiss. Do that shit again, right? Show us that wasn't a fluke, that you didn't just catch teams with their pants down off guard, right? Do it again. I think the number 2 team is the Lions right now. It's the Lions. Until otherwise notified, it's the Lions. They were the team in this NFC Championship game. They don't look like they're going away. They re-signed all of their players. They did this without a dominant secondary last year. They did all of this without a secondary that was worth a damn. And now they went out and got a couple of young boys, again, trial by fire, right? Baptism by fire with the young boys at the cornerback position. But if those youngins come in here and play ball, look out. Look out. So I'd put Detroit as number 2 for now. But, you know, the NFL is set up for parity. And that's the beauty of the NFL. Set up for someone to come out of nowhere and potentially do damage, like Atlanta, for instance. So, you know, we'll see. JLG, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. JLG writes, after the Eagles signed back then, I got curious as to who else was on their roster. And to my surprise, I saw CGJ and Devin White. I hate Howie so much. I still can't believe Saquon is in Philly. This is what he's done over the last 3 or 4 years strong, is he finds a way to get names. Now, those names don't always play to the level of the respect that their name garners around league circles. Like, nobody else wanted Devin White. As much as we hear his name, and I'm not going to poo-poo Devin White because I was interested in him. I was willing to kick the tires, but understand that there was a reason nobody wanted Devin White. We questioned his love for the game. We questioned his motivation. We questioned his heart. Anytime you start questioning a guy's heart, that's a red flag for most teams, and they just don't want any parts of that. But the Eagles are like, hey, and this is the way I was thinking about it. Hey, bro, you like football? You want to keep getting paid to play football? Because you got one foot out the door. Because the one thing you can't do in this league, right? The league has shown us, as long as we can't prove it, you can slap your wife around or your girlfriend around, catch a charge, right? As long as we can't prove it, but we know you did the shit. That won't keep you out of the league. You can do 127 miles an hour with kids in the back on a high-speed chase with the police and still play in the league. You talented enough, you can get another shot. The league has shown us that they'll turn a blind eye to some crazy shit. But don't let us question your heart and whether you really are invested or not, because that'll get you out of the league faster than anything else will. And there's been a lot of chatter about Devin White and his effort and how bad he wants it. And that's why his market was as low as it was. That man signed a 1-year prove-it deal with the Eagles. That wasn't oh yeah, let me hit this market and get broken off, right? That wasn't the deal that Patrick Queen got from the Steelers. And even his deal wasn't as much as we thought it was going to be. Devin White's talent suggests that he should have been getting the deal that we saw the Bills linebacker get 2 off seasons ago to go to Chicago, right? That's the kind of deal he should have been getting. Not a 1-year prove-it deal, but he got to prove it. As far as CGJ goes, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Philly's where he belongs. You know, he was never supposed to leave in the first place. CJ Gardner-Johnson was supposed to stay in Philadelphia. And he got in his feelings about the deal. He thought he got lowballed. He thought he could get more in the market. He later found out that Eagles deal was the best deal that was out there. He had to take less money to prove that, hey, I'm a baller. And he made his point by the Eagles secondary kind of falling the hell apart last year without him. He made his point, which is why they re-signed him. But he went to Detroit and got hurt. So he never was able to show that he was a baller without him and, you know, get that bag somewhere else. But he was made for Philly. So it was, I think it was always love between him and them. It just didn't end the way that it should have, and he went back. But yeah, they got stuff on their roster. They stay with shit on their roster. But that don't mean a damn thing if it ain't coached up right and it's not cohesive. You can't buy a championship. We know firsthand here in Washington, you can't buy a chip. And it feels like Howie every year tries to buy a chip. And there's something to be said about continuity, which the reason that they've been good for a very long time is because they always had that stabilizing force within their locker room. That nucleus of Lane Johnson, Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelsey, Brandon Graham, right? That core 4 guys that were there that keep that shit together. They police everything in that locker room. That shit is starting to disintegrate right before our very eyes. So when you bringing in guys like AJ Brown, who's a diva, when you're bringing in guys that, are like Devin White, who we question his effort, all that shit may not mesh and gel together. We saw how they quit at the end of that year. The Eagles weren't shit at the end of the season. They got steamrolled by the Giants with the division on the line. They quit in the first half of that game, right? So now there's no Fletcher Cox. There's no Jason Kelsey. Lane Johnson is on his last legs. Brandon Graham is on his last legs. We'll see if they got enough leaders in that locker room to police that locker room. We'll see. Because they slowly but surely dying off. But they got a lot of talent. And if they can put it all together, they're dangerous. As we saw in 2022, right? Rail Goated. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Rail Goated writes, your thoughts on what's going on with Colorado? I'm going to be honest with you. I hate it. I'm so glad we got our quarterback. I want nothing to do with Shedeur Sanders. He strikes me as a dude that thinks his shit don't stink. And he's the type of dude that's arrogant and pompous. And look at who his dad is, right? He's been raised in that environment to think I'm better than everybody else. And so he acts like Deion, except Deion is a Hall of Fame player. Your dad could do that shit because he was one of the greatest dudes to ever lace up a pair of cleats. So he can talk shit and he can back it up. You haven't done jack diddly poo squat in college or in the league. You led a 4-8 team last year. Now, granted, they weren't super talented. And what you did at Jackson State was remarkable, but that's Jackson State. Now you're playing with the big boys, and we want to see what you do. And he got a lot of lip already, and I don't like that shit. And, with NIL deals, and he already doing commercials with his dad, he got money. He driving around in all these fancy whips, and he on social media talking shit to ex-teammates. It's ugly. It looks bad, and you don't think teams are taking notice of this shit? I saw the odds already dip for him being the number 1 pick just off the strength of this man running his mouth on social media. And you would think Deion would say, hey, bro, let me do the talking, or, yo, just bat back, chill. Deion egging this shit on. I don't like it, right? I don't like it. I don't care, personally. The only way you're going to shut people up is to win. If you don't win, they going to yoke Deion ass up and his son. Drag his ass. And I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it at all. A wise man said, sit down. Be humble. They need to sit down and be humble. You went 4-8 last year. You got dudes jumping in the portal left and right. They just lost the Edwards kid, the running back that early last season was dynamite for them. I don't know where he would have been with them this year, but dudes are jumping in the portal left and right. He left Colorado to go be a backup running back at K-State. I mean, I don't really know, what they got going on out there and what it's going to turn out to be, but Shedeur strike. First of all, I don't think he's all that nice. I think he's solid. He's not a tremendous athlete, right? He takes a bunch of sacks, and I don't think he's all that great. And he's out here walking around like he's a combination of Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Michael Vick, and Lamar Jackson all rolled into one. And I'm like, bro, what are we doing right now? Be humble. Sit down. Be humble. But we'll see what happens. I mean, we'll all be watching when the college football season kicks off, just like we were last year. We'll all be watching, but it's a lot more at stake this year than it was last year. Because last year you knew you had another year. This year, it's it, buddy. Make a break. Put up or shut up. You are the favorite to be the number 1 pick in the draft next year. Don't F this up. Don't F it up. Don't F it up. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Did somebody just name AJ Brown as a locker room leader? That shit is comical. That's funny. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, Daniel fits into this team and organization in general like hand in glove, and Kingsbury could turn Daniels into an MVP with his skill set. That remains to be seen. We'll see if it's a match made in heaven or not. But what I can tell you is I love the kid. I'm going to talk about it tomorrow on the Command Post live, because I finally got around to his introductory press conference after he was drafted. Took me a little while because I was all draft out. So I just like, I got to decompress, and I finally got to a point where I want some of that content now. Like I'm ready to start seeking out Jaden Daniels on like the Pivot podcast and all of that stuff. He was with Kevin Hart on Coldest Balls. I might go watch that, right? So much like I said, I'm gonna have some stuff in the archives that when things start to slow down, I can go and get it and check it out to kind of get an even better feel for who he is as a person off the field, right? But yeah, I'm excited about it. I'll just say that. I'll say that. Vincent Coe, thank you for being a member of the MOBB for 31 months. Who writes, Lou, just watched the movie Iron Claw. It was pretty damn good. Are you familiar with Von Erichs back in the day? Yeah, I want to see that movie. Your boy from the High School Musical, Zac Efron, is in that movie. I'm dying to watch that. I'm not paying for it though. That shit was like $3.99. I'm like, it'll be free $99 here shortly, and I'll wait. I'm gonna wait them out until that shit hits Amazon Prime or Netflix. I'll be all over it then. But I watched the preview already. I'm like, yo, I want to watch. Yeah, we all know the Von Erich story, right? I've watched at least 2 or 3 documentaries involving that family. It's a tragic situation. They were one of the greatest wrestling families, definitely of the 80s, right? And how all of them ended up passing away is crazy. It almost felt like they were cursed, right? That movie looks like it's going to be damn good. I can't wait to watch it, but I'm not paying for it. So I haven't watched it yet. It's going to hit one of these streaming services soon though. So I'll watch it once it hits one of those. So anyway, I digress. So that is going to take us to our final segment of the show and garbage time. So I brought this individual up earlier, and it got me to thinking about what's left out on these free agent streets. And there's quite a few items still out here, man, that can help a team that thinks they're close to winning something of note. Tyler Boyd, I think, can still help a team. If I'm Tennessee, I'm going after a guy like Tyler Boyd. I still don't love what the Titans have at receiver. I go after him. If you're the Chargers, you need a veteran, right? You need a veteran. So I think that'd be a great fit for him too in LA. But Boyd isn't the only, player out there. Justin Simmons is still available. And I thought he would have signed by now. I'm not even gonna front. I thought he would have signed by now. But I'm not shocked that he waited till after the draft to see what his options would be. I still think that I think teams have made the phone call, and I think that the money has been the issue. Like, he wants to be paid. And I'm not going to just show up and play somewhere, just because. And I think he's waiting for the right opportunity. Even if it's a 1-year deal, he still wants 1 year, 14, 15, $16 million. And I don't know if, we saw the safety market that teams aren't handing that out. So he may have to come down on what he's asking for. He may not relent. He may say, look, one of y'all going to have an injury. One of y'all going to need me. I'll be here. But he's still out there. Xavier Howard is still out there. Stephon Gilmore is still out there. So you got some veteran corners. Gilmore is a little bit more up there in age. I always tell you the cornerback position is no country for old men. And he's past, what is he, 33 now, 34, somewhere in that neighborhood. Meanwhile, Howard is only 30, but he feels like he's 35 or 36 with all the injuries he's had over the last 3 or 4 years. So he's still out there. Kareem Hunt has been out here on the market the last 2 years or so, right around this same time. He always finds work towards camp. So we'll see. And it's usually back with the Browns. So we'll see if that happens again. I got to look at the Browns draft. They didn't have that many draft picks to begin with to see if they added a running back or not. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Tyler Boyd, as I mentioned, is out there still. David Bakhtiari is a name that if you're desperate for help at the tackle position, he might be able to come in if he can stay healthy, which he has not been able to do here of late. But he might be able to come in and help you. So there's still some names out on these free agent streets of some veterans that may be able to come in and still help and provide you with something. I'm not sure. Dalton Reisner, is he still out there? He may be. He may not be. I know Connor Williams is still out there, former Cowboy, former Miami Dolphin. Somebody just told me Zay Flowers got released, and he did, by Jacksonville, because they got Brian Thomas Jr. in the first round, so they no longer need Zay Flowers. He's a guy that can help and is a quality receiver when healthy. So it's still some stuff out there, It just depends on what your level of desperation is. It just depends on how you feeling about, your situation and where you think you are. If you're not close, then you don't need to go get one of these veteran players. If you think you're close, that could be the guy that puts you over the top. Is Yannick Ngakoue still available? He seems to be always available this time of the year. He seems to be more of a hired gun at this point of his career. But I brought all of that up to say this. There are still some veterans available, and you probably won't hear them, get signed until we get closer to training camp. And deadline spur action, as I always tell you, is the closer you get to camp, the more teams look to try to fortify their roster. And some teams even wait until they see what they have in camp, and then they realize, all right, we don't have enough here, and they go out and get the veteran, right? So we'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I greatly appreciate each and every single one of you joining me tonight on the show. Another good one in the books, as usual, with you guys late. And I look forward to doing it again with you guys on Friday. Friday will be more in that midday, early evening pocket. As you know, I don't usually do Friday evenings. So we'll try to sneak another podcast in Friday to set the table for the playoffs. I want to talk about the playoffs because we got some big games tomorrow. Knicks, Sixers, game 6. I think we got the Bucks and the Pacers tomorrow as well, if I'm not mistaken. If not, they're going to be Friday. But I think we're at the point now where every series is pretty much every other day from here on out until we get to the next series. So we'll have some big game 6s to discuss, whether those series are still going on or they're going to be done. And so if either they're done or they've been prolonged and extended to 7, and we'll talk about that heading into the weekend, or we'll be previewing a game 6 that has yet to take place. Either way, we'll do that on Friday, among other topics. So anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Until next time, You guys have a good one. Take care. God bless. Good night.